And we are live. Or at least I'm alive. Are you alive? Hello, everyone. Just waiting for Brandon. He's changing his shirt. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say that, but I'm saying it. I hope everyone's well. Do join us on the private chat or even on the public chat. Hang on a minute. Let me go and click on that. There we go. Right. Yes, join us on the chat. Let us know what you're thinking, because goodness me, what a 48 hours. Well, what a week. What a month. Oh, hi, Andy. Yes, I'm here. I'm just waiting for Brandon. Hi, Elaine. Coffee, Brandon and Penny. What could be better? I mean, you know, this astrology at the moment is completely bonkers. So we're going to have to really pay attention to what's going on. Hi, Poonam. Good to see you. Heidi. Hi. It's just crazy what's going on. It really, Rebecca, it's insane. I think maybe I'm quite lucky being on Gozo at this point. Hello.
You couldn't resist, could you?
Leo ascendant.
Leo ascendant. You just couldn't not do the running thing. Penny, thank you so much. I'm so glad we're together again. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. And it's let's just even kind of recap even the last what
I hate Sandy, yes.
12 hours, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Without any valid thing. You and I are texting each other in one another's middle of the night going, oh, WTF. And we had planned this show. We had planned this show anyways. Yeah, we planned our time today anyways. And we were like, well, we'll just ease into it. And we're like, boy, are we prophetic, right?
Wow.
Boy, are we able to kind of see this stuff coming. Wow. So those of you that are just tuning in and waking up, is it fair to say the world's on fire?
Well, it's not quite, but there's certainly a lot of energy flying around all over the place, and it's going to be pretty tricky and unpredictable for the next few days with that Mars square Uranus.
Yeah, and Jupiter's putting in its 2 cents, and we have, this
Saturn.
And we've just got, domestically in the United States, we're upside down. We're defending things that aren't defensible. We're taking the core of who we are, which is, whether it be protest, peaceful protest, whatever your dialogue is, and we're villainizing it. We're villainizing what was normal for 250 years, and now all of a sudden it's illegal and oppressed. And of course, we're also talking about Israel and its aggression. Yes. Let's not call it anything but what it is. Mm-hmm. And we also have, Russia doing its games. We have, and then we have air travel. The India crash this week.
Uranus.
It's in the chart, guys. It's in the chart.
The thing is, the exact Mars-Uranus square, it doesn't go exact till Sunday.
Boy, do we have a weekend ahead of us, don't we? What a great time. We should have a parade. So I'm going to have a parade. I have a lot of crystals. And I like to, rule over my kingdom. It's kind of something I do when nobody's looking. And I like to line up all of my crystals as they go by, and they're just like, here's abundance, and here's self-love, and here's manifestation. And then, I even include, tourmaline, even though it's a bit of a downer. It's like, hey, I'm going to stabilize you. Why don't we have a parade for crystals? Just an idea.
That's a very good idea.
Penny, Penny, how are you? Let everybody know how you're doing.
I'm actually doing very well. I was a bit wobbly midweek. I don't know why. Maybe it was the full moon, although the full moon was not particularly badly aspected as such, but I just felt a bit negative, down, miserable. But my shoulder is doing really well. I'm doing my physio and I started driving again.
Oh,
So
look out, everybody, is kind of what you're saying. Let this be your
maybe
public
not this
servant.
weekend. Not with the energy.
This is, just like Napoleon, you belong on an island in the Mediterranean. I'm just saying there's kind of a correlation between your driving. Anyway, so it was just me
There
being.
you go. There you go.
Me,
I'm
me being.
interested that Leslie Callahan is saying that Los Angeles is not burning down. If
Oh,
they don't, I have to say that Sky News, which is my regular go-to, haven't actually expressed an opinion like that. They've said there is an area that has been going through rioting, and actually they've said it was peaceful demonstrations.
and I actually have the map to show it, and it is the map that is that shows police activity and caution, everything from like driving, like when Penny's been driving through your neighborhood, it might turn yellow. That was a bad joke, sorry. Anyways, but it also entails like, hey, kind of a public service. This is the reaction to the things that are going on. I'm going to actually show you that map a little bit later on, so you guys are going to want to stay tuned. And there's also a part to this too where this is why from the bottom of my heart, I love you, but our discussions are also that connective tissue. What do I always say, when we connect? I'm like, what does it look like over there? What are they telling you there? And Sky News, which is something we can tap into here.
Yeah.
There's other news outlets that basically give you an unfettered, or at least we don't have a skin in the game, but we're going to tell the story because that's what we do. There is still journalism in the world. And it's interesting that you're saying that it's, kind of parsed out. And I think it's wonderful news that you're, and we talked about this in your solar return, like you got a couple of months here. This is like a bit of a reset, but it's almost like a rejuvenation for you in a different direction. And I love it. I love the Ferrero Rocher you give me. Sometimes too much. That's a little, remember that you can't unsee what you've seen. That's all I'm going to say. It's like, whoa, there you go. She sends me pictures of the cat all the time. So the other part of this though, with kind of the global influence and that sort of thing, what's your gauge here with kind of the European temperature of the United States? Because the last time when we talked about it, it's just like, it was negative, but it was specific. It was kind of like, we don't like the tariffs. We don't like why is he picking fights with countries he should be getting along with? What's the temperature today?
I would say that we are, in general, my observation shows that Europe, and I include the UK in that, are just treading on eggshells and not really making any strident comments about the US, because, of course, we do need the US as an ally.
Well, it's funny because then when we say that, Trump administration looks at that as a negotiation point. Well, you need us. Well, you need us. Well, and one of the things that made the country great, part of the thing that United States did well consistently is, first of all, cooler heads always prevailed. Like in the course of history, if you study the United States history at all, and I don't care if you're talking about the Boston Tea Party, I don't care if you're talking about even, you can even go into the pre-Cana of the U.S., which is, the Bacon Rebellion. You can go into, even the modern Tea Party, that factioned off of conservatism. There was still kind of a conversation that still went on saying, I'm going to hold my beliefs strongly enough to hold my position so you don't lose it in your negotiation, so you don't lose it in your lexicon. And in a sense, maybe this is all just a trial and error of us getting it right too. And I think Europe, and I get why Europe's frustrated though, 100%.
Yeah. Privately, obviously, people talk privately. General consensus European-wise is to hold a steady course through turbulent times. I mean, it's interesting because a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, Donald Trump was talking about these huge tariffs on Europe, which actually don't seem to have materialized. It's a great sales technique because it made me rush out and buy a new mobile because I wanted to get a new smartphone this year for the camera, basically for YouTube. And
Right.
I just thought, I've got to do it now then. I'm going to get it. And I did. But
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
I don't know whether I was jumping the gun or
What an economic, what an economic boondoggle, with that to be like, I have to buy it now, which is why people are stocking up again, everything to whatever. And I love it. I love our new listeners that tune in and then they're like, I have expectations of you instead of letting it flow and they have to kind of put their 2 cents in. Hey, Nanette, sit back, relax, and grab some popcorn. There's plenty of astrology. See, we have a following and people tune in and they want to hear us kind of not let their nerves be frazzled. Both can be true. We can do astrology and then also set the tone that cooler heads are going to prevail. So stay around, Nanette. We got this.
yeah.
Thanks for
Stick
the 2
around,
cents.
guys.
Thanks for the 2 cents. By the way, this is a reason why they got rid of pennies. That's the thing when you do realize when I bring you to the US, it's going to be, we're bringing the penny back. That's going to be like our tour.
The pennies will drop in.
Isn't that great? Oh my gosh. So all of our production value is in this picture.
Oh,
Couple
yes.
of cutouts. Yeah, I spent the whole morning cutting it out.
It's
And
lovely.
I did it mostly for our new listeners like Nanette
Is
and
that our own national flag, the national flag
Is that what it is?
of Gozo and New York State?
Red, yellow, and blue? Is that our thing? The red, yellow, and blue. It was just so striking. I think it's just so funny that you and I kind of coincidentally did our headshots, and in our headshots we're like, we need to do the arm fold. And then of course I just started laughing when I saw it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't get the updated pictures, or I had them somewhere buried in the email or whatever. And of course when I first put it in, the first one from the from the website was off. All right, so as promised, let's talk some astrology here. Yeah, I mean, we're going to take a hard look at Iran for the particulars that it's really in everybody's face right now. And we are going to do some Los Angeles things here as well, because it's, there's other aspects of this that we're going to look at, but let's look at this globally as well. I was pretty shocked when I opened up, I had a great show last night out in Johnstown, New York. Thank you guys for coming out. But when I get in my car and I'm just about, wrapping up and whatever, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to listen to? And I see that Israel has launched a full attack on Iran, and I'm just like, son of a gun. Why? What are we doing here? But looking at the astrology here, start to kind of walk us through, because there are some pretty brutal truths here.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the main thing that we have to be aware of yesterday, today, tomorrow, Sunday, into Monday, and into next week is that we have this Jupiter square Saturn and Neptune, but also we've got the Mars square Uranus. So Mars is squaring Uranus from Leo to Taurus, and both of them are at the anaretic degree of their respective signs. And at the same time, we've got this Jupiter in Cancer where it's exalted, square Saturn in Aries, which is in its fall. Now, of course, Mars rules Aries, so you've got this layering over of energies. And one has this fixed energy with the Mars Uranus. So you've got nothing moving anywhere. Everything, it can only break.
It's almost like two immovable forces, right?
Yes.
Where when those two immovable forces start to kind of like interact with one another, it's there. I mean, just kind of let's piece this down a little bit, because Jupiter moving into Cancer in and of itself is actually a really, it's somewhat of a positive thing, correct?
Yes.
I mean, and it's proclamation.
It's happy in Cancer. Jupiter does well in Cancer. And in general, we should, I think, gain great benefits from Jupiter over the next year in Cancer, in terms of reuniting families being in a much better position, maybe even abundance coming in for families and more attention giving to traditions. And actually, we have to remember Cancer also represents one's own country, the homeland. So
Mm,
there is something about having the opportunistic energy of Jupiter in Cancer, which shows that however bad everything may seem on the surface, we do have Jupiter in Cancer. So maybe actually we can flip all this energy into a positive, and it doesn't have to be negative and all breaking down into terrible little pieces. And, to have what happened yesterday with this devastating air disaster that I think shocked all of us wide awake,
yeah.
uh, it, um, it really makes us aware that we get caught in a lot of first world problems. And
Oh my gosh, totally. Because you've also and you said a ton here. And I don't want any of this lost on anyone because you're right. I mean that air disaster, we're going to pay attention to where Uranus is here in a second as well. But one of the other parts that you kind of mentioned is that it doesn't have to be, we're choosing to have this be a disruptive. It's not a level up. So,
yeah,
without kind of like making everybody kind of like, oh no, Brandon, here we go. One of the things that I just want to point out is like we're choosing as a world, as a society, to use this time for conflict.
yeah,
We could have used this energy to level up, but
yes,
instead it is a conflict. And one of the other things that you did say that I just want to point out, there are people that will take what you say and say, well, Jupiter moving into Cancer, isn't that, where it's one's own country? I'm going to say, could it be known as the fatherland or the motherland as it being,
mhm,
Cancerian take on it? So
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I think there's a lot of energy to that,
mm.
both in what you said and also kind of how it kind of rolls out. Specifically to Iran, though, what are the indicators where this lands? You pointed it out to me this
Well,
morning.
isn't
I'm
it
just like, there it
interesting
is.
because Iran natally have Jupiter in Cancer, right?
Mm,
And it's sitting there in the 12th house of their chart because they have a Leo ascendant.
right.
And also, interestingly, the USA has Jupiter in Cancer natally,
What do you say?
at a later degree, but both countries are going to get a Jupiter return over the next year. America gets their Jupiter return first because it's an earlier degree, and Iran not until about July 2026. And
Mm-hmm.
what I think is interesting is that will happen in the 12th house of this country's natal chart. As if we remember that Jupiter represents not just expansion, luck, and opportunity, but also it represents spirituality and understanding the higher levels of frequency and energies of consciousness that collectively we need to work collectively to raise our consciousness to a level where we don't have to get caught into the baser ways of my God, your God, their God, whose God.
Yeah.
That we are all one. Because I'm wondering whether Iran has the potential to go through a massive rebirth, whether there may be some kind of
It, it,
regime change that is provoked by what is happening now, that ultimately enables the whole country to catch up energetically with where many other cultures have reached. Does that
you,
make
you,
sense?
you do know I love everything that you are saying
Okay, thank
because well, for two reasons. Basically, I mean, Iran, if you lived through the 70s and 80s, you remember what Iran was once upon a time. It was a very democratic, or at least republic state.
Yeah.
And there were freedoms abound. And there was without a doubt just a different world. They are now under,
Yeah.
what's that?
Iran was Persia, the Shah of Persia.
Well,
they had a royal family.
well, and then with the new Ayatollah, it was Sharia law. It was, women need to be 10 pieces, masks, the whole 9 yard, burqas. It's, we were in a time where, it took advantage of our leaderships, our policies. It also took the temperature of the world. It also said, fine, if you're going to, Israel's been a key player in this insofar that, it's like, fine, if you're going to create an Israel state, instead of us accepting everybody and letting them assimilate, we're going to create our own Sharia law state. And that was in part, it wasn't directly related, but it was in part the climate of the day. Now we fast forward in your commentary here about the climate of the day, when you have two major powers recognizing that there is significant change that's happening, whether it be through agitation or external sources, that's significant to me. It's also significant to me to recognize and, just kind of doing the math. If the, United States is, 270 some odd years down the road, we're basically gone through like our 25th, 26th, Jupiter return, right? So, with that in mind, it's like, what lessons are we finding? What lessons are we doing? And traditionally, most people, let's just kind of call the over under 84. 84 is such a magical number in terms of evolution. It is actually how Hinduism sees its elevation of the lifespan, that your midlife is, 24 years or 42 years, and then you have your mile markers in between. But just to kind of like recognize that this Jupiter return is not in a vacuum. This Jupiter return is not without its merits to kind of say, like, what's your level up here? And again, right now we are choosing to use it in the sense of, well, this isn't working, let's blow it up. Or this isn't really kind of exactly the way that we wanted to, get there. But we're going to use this to kind of, become the polar entity that we think we should be. And Penny, I think your insight here is really great, because the part of the conflict, and again, we're just kind of laying it out there. We're saying, hey, this is what astrology is doing, and then we're kind of taking that and then taking the interpretation to it. If you want to take a strong stance, I'll go first and say, listen, conflict sucks. Wars are terrible. Needless, senseless acts of violence don't work. I don't care if it's in bombing. I don't care if it's in rioting. And by the way, we have to take all of this at face value, that what we're reporting can be trusted cover to cover, because even the Palestinian conflict was not reported correctly. We took little tidbits that got emphasized. The things in LA, we have concrete proof. I've spoken to two people in downtown LA, or that are in the greater LA area, and both of them basically say, yeah, there's basically they're roughing up panhandlers. Like, hello, like this is your answer. They're trying to fulfill something that's not there. One of the other charts that we had here, let me bring this guy back up.
Which one are you going to now?
Oh, you look. There we go. So let's take a look at why Israel would do something like this. And again, we're going to get to some U.S. stuff here. Yeah, it's hot stuff. Hot tamale. What do you see, Penny?
Well, the most obvious thing is the Mars return. So you've got transiting Mars conjunct natal Mars in Israel's chart. And of course, they're both squaring transiting Uranus. So it would have been strange if they hadn't done anything, I guess.
Well, and the funny part about this is, being on the ascendant, is that they, of course, are the aggressor. And by the way, guys, let's just talk astrology. If your best friend has this in their chart, they're going to pick a fight that day. If they're in that chart, if this is a similar chart, they are going to, like, just they're just going to be head over heels about being the aggressor. And by the way, you can use it in positive forms. There's other ways to manifest this energy, such as, hey guys, let's all get together. I'm going to throw a party. You could do it that way too. That could be equally as energetic, satisfying. But
Yeah.
in terms of Israel, the thing that pops out for me is that
Yeah.
the sun is conjunct to Uranus in the 10th.
Yes, yes, yes. Oh my God, yes, I hadn't noticed that. Wow.
Don't be. I mean, Israel has been an unchecked thing, and I understand the plight of Judaism, right?
Yeah.
I'm a fanboy of ancient religions. I am a fanboy of understanding that we all came from a cultural need for religion, and I want to respect that. I'm having a hard time not following the actual books that you came from. And I'm not saying you have to turn the other cheek. I'm not saying you don't have to defend yourself, but you don't have to take a piece of the West Bank after you negotiated it. You don't need to take a portion of Jordan. You don't need to. And again, the fight back is, I get it. You got to defend yourself. But on the other side of it, Iran, really? Because they have nuclear. And by the way, what is Uranus but uranium?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that's why they're fighting. That's why they're bombing them. Well, they're getting, uranium enrichment going, and they're like, well, our sun's over uranium. We're going to make the stuff explode.
Yeah. And you see, transiting Uranus is going to just about to go over their midheaven. And by July the 7th, it's moved into their 10th house. And, they've also, like I've had in my chart as a Taurian, Uranus conjunct their natal sun. So you can see what has been unfolding with Israel over the last 2 or 3 years, really now, isn't it? But Uranus isn't really touching their sun now. Yes, so on Sunday, the transiting sun is conjunct their natal Uranus. What is going to happen Sunday then? That's what I'm asking.
Well, I think Saturday and Sunday are two of the biggest days in human history. Like, I think that there is just an unfolding that's happening. I don't want to jump ahead quite yet, but I think what's happening in LA is a precursor for Saturday, because they always love the tester. They always love the tester. They're furious about polling. They want to see what people respond to on the social medias, and the social media outlets right now are nothing short of vile.
Yeah.
They're just vile. They're misquoting, they're misrepresenting, they are under delivering. I think anybody worth their salt can debate. I think anybody worth their salt. And listen, some people will just say, oh no, I don't like to debate. Like, I get it, I understand it, I fully kind of, get that aspect of it. But when people come to debate and say, hey, I feel this way, in any good debate, you end up respecting their position. You should anyways. And what we have been noticing and what we have seen is that we no longer respect each other's position. I have a hard time respecting somebody that is posting Stephen Miller tropes about immigrants don't deserve rights, when we have such a low emotional IQ and such a low historical IQ to know that we created all of this backlog in immigration. Yes, there's been a flood at the border. Okay. Here is a fun stat. And I don't know if we're quite ready to shift to this yet. The Biden administration in its 4 years deported more people than Donald Trump did in his 4, by a lot, by a ton. The difference is that Biden followed the rules. His administration, I'm not interested to hear about a pizza party. I'm not interested to hear about his cognizant. Thank you very much, Jake Tapper, you freaking drifter. I am not interested in listening to all of the flaws of the Biden administration. What I'm interested in saying is scoreboard. He literally took the immigration policy and coincided it with an appropriate action. He also wanted to put more effort into immigration management, and it got shot down by a Republican Congress. It is the division in this country has been driven by that. And I think the astrology is the coming to roost of that. And that's part of the challenge. And by the way, you can find that on immigration.gov. It is an independent government site that has not been shut down yet. On the first page, it has the bar metrics of what Clinton did, of what Obama did, of what Biden did, and Trump has done with immigration. Donald Trump didn't give a rat's ass about immigration until he figured out that, first of all, whether it's because his fragile ego realized that Biden did it better, or whether it's because they told him it was going to be a division point. But here we are, right? So does Europe?
I'm
Go ahead.
curious because Debbie of Three Shifting Veils, love the name.
Oh, we love Deb.
There is protesting in Florida.
Well, they're protesting all over the place, Penny. I mean, this is the thing. There have been, and again, I forget the last statistic, and I probably saw it about 2-3 weeks ago. There has been, on average, in every major American city, a protest. The protests have been prevalent because we are trying to get people are trying to get the attention of our representatives, of our senators, of our people. And we've also had something incredibly disturbing happen yesterday. The incredibly underqualified Department of Homeland Security and in charge of ICE, Kristi Noem. And by the way, she's DHS department, but she's kind of leading these raids. And they're all just pony pieces. They're all just, she's in new, shocking new, gear and garb. And it's just, they're cosplaying. Like our government is currently cosplaying itself. They are not qualified to do it. So they're playing dress up and they're like, we're playing the part, fake it till you make it. But what they're doing is they're trampling, constitutional rights. Kristi Noem was having a press conference. It was an open press conference. If you had credentials to be in the building, you could be in the press conference. And one of the senators from Florida, Padilla, showed up and was like, I have some questions for Kristi Noem. And he was taken down and dragged out and cuffed and brought out and detained for a short period of time because they don't want conflict when it comes to their questioning. And that is this Uranus piece of it. And we're going to talk about the U.S. return here in a second. But that is the part where it's like the immigration thing has gotten out of control that you can't even question it and you can't defend it. So there's the conflict. I think what I want to make sure is that we got on record by saying that's what the conflict is.
Yeah.
Does Europe have challenges with immigration the way the United States does?
Gosh, yes.
How did
the country does? Every country in Europe has. I mean, look at Great Britain. We've got boats coming across from France every single day, hundreds of them with immigrants in.
How do they work with that? Like, what are their policies?
You see, there are these people traffickers who just you pay your money and you get in a rubber dinghy and off you go across the English Channel. And then they get detained by the authorities in the UK, who have to house them and feed them and look after them, process their papers and decide whether they're sent back to their country of origin or whether they have a genuine asylum claim.
And so, in other words,
in every single European country.
Wow, isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that like due process is a thing around the world? And it, for some reason, it was the thing that we got really right. You might not have liked its speed, you might not have liked its outcome all the time, but everybody got their day in court. And that's essentially what you're saying. But I love I'm going to Star Wars this for a second. So basically, if you found Han Solo in a cantina, he would give you safe passage to Alderaan. 5 of you got that joke. I love you all.
Did I just look at you blankly then?
I love that you just talked about dinghies. By the way, as you guys know, you can find Penny at pennydix.com. She is available for astrological readings, and she's very good at this. I hear this all the time. I actually had somebody say this to me a couple of weeks ago, and I meant to share this with you. A person that will remain nameless, but I know that they tuned in. It was a good reading. We were talking about things. We were pulling up astrology. We were connecting with things. And at the end of it, I said, "Oh, I really enjoyed our time. Thank you so much," and everything else. She goes, "Yeah, Penny's reading was much different than yours." And I said, "What does that mean?" And she smiled and she said, "Well, she was painting the picture of like basically at the end of the day, she liked the British accent more, and certainly how you did it." I'm still just a silly boy. And then also, I just want to give everybody a heads up that the new stuff for me, part of the reason why I've been a little bit quieter, More Than a Media is ready to upload. You're going to want to follow all of those fun things out there. Just type in More Than a Media, check the website. If you are ready, if you're a practitioner, if you are someone that is a thought leader that wants a platform, the new platform is uploading as we speak, and we're about to launch. Do follow along on that. It's going to be a great time. And of course, here's the LA thing. I'm going to pull this back a little bit because I want to go in a slightly different direction because I want to talk about the parade.
Can I just bring in that Simi is reminding us that the G7 starts in Canada on Sunday, and that's like a bit of a day to start the G7 conference.
Boy, is that a thing to do. What is up with this, B?
So it's from Sunday. It's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think. So the G7, and she's saying Trump is going to that.
Let's talk about the birthday boy for a minute.
Oh, birthday tomorrow, isn't it?
Oh, happy birthday. I mean, this day will be revered in history for a lot of reasons. But I'm gonna, let's just close our eyes for a second and pretend that you and I are somehow tapped to be counsel to the White House. And by the way, every White House has utilized mystics and mediums and psychics throughout the year, astrologers. So let's just say that they went team Penny and Brandon. And the president says, I'd really like to learn about this astrology thing. And then, by the way, that's awful by design. Because he is going to try and, copyright his nonsense at some point. What do you see in this chart, and how do you grow? How do you tell him where his growth points are this year?
Okay.
And how do you tell him what he's in for?
We better just explain what we've got. We've got Donald Trump's birth chart. That's the inner wheel. And the outer wheel is his secondary progressions. Now, progressions are a really interesting way of getting a much deeper sense of the energies that are at play in somebody's life. So if you have a session with me, if we get time, I will always look at your secondary progressions as well, especially if it's to do with sort of big decisions that need to be made. So the first thing or several things leap out with Donald Trump's progressions. We've got his progressed Mercury in the 12th house in Leo conjunct his natal Mars.
That just screams to me. That screams to me.
That's fighting talk, isn't it? Fighting talk. But also, I think what's interesting is that it's in his 12th house. So there is also this sense of internal conflict.
Right.
Internal conflict, not quite sure whether he even believes his own rhetoric. If we then move on to his progressed sun in the first house in Virgo, he's a little worry pot at the moment.
Yeah, he's like, look at me and look out for me.
Yeah, he's a happy bunny. He is suffering from anxiety.
Big time.
And then if you move round into the second house, you've got his progressed Mars in Libra, conjunct his natal Chiron and natal Jupiter. Now, this is in his house of finance. So you've got it's all okay. I'll tell you what leapt into my mind. Some of the first videos we did going back probably 3-4 years ago, where you talked about him being a flight risk.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that.
Have I got enough money in my money pot? I think I'm going to go now.
I mean, listen, to him, I am still standing behind everything I have said. Everything I've said. And that is in no uncertain terms that he is not going to stay in the United States. He's not staying in his places here. He is ruining things just to ruin them, so you remember him. And it's funny, I've been teaching a bereavement course, understanding bereavement, so you understand the elements of it. And it's not just the 5 steps of grief, although that is certainly part of it. They're kind of that interlocking flow of, they're not steps as in you accomplish them. They're things that kind of flow back and forth. There are 2 other steps that come along with that. One of them is understanding your karmic value, your karmic partnerships, your karmic imprint in everything. And then the second part, the second part of where we kind of grow consciously in bereavement is you understand your purpose in it. You understand that there is purpose in it, the things that you can kind of move on. One of the things that we discussed, and I really kind of emphasize on this, is the person that's leaving is trying to make a mess so you remember them. Because there may be challenges in their impact. Maybe they didn't do their work. Maybe they didn't do it right. Maybe they didn't, whatever. Donald Trump is 100% showing a soul nest level of let me ruin everything so you remember me, because the things that you would remember me without my disasters here aren't really all that good. And for that reason is all the more reason that he is about to pull the biggest coup de grace. He wants to be able to say that there's a coup in the United States and he is in exile and he has to move the government to Riyadh or wherever the freak it is that he wants to move to. And with that in mind, he is 100% basically saying like, okay, fine, I didn't do a good job. He doesn't care if you think he did a good job. He just wants to be remembered.
I think you're right. And that's you and I, Brandon, Leo Ascendant. That is something, one of the shadow sides of a Leo Ascendant. We don't care what we say as long as people remember us.
I feel attacked. I feel Penny has just declared war on me. What is up with that, Penny?
I've declared war on myself because that is a truth about Leo. And we have to own it, because at least by being aware of it, then it prevents us talking rubbish too much of the time and actually perhaps coming out with something worthwhile. But I'm coming back to these progressions. If you look at his progressed ascendant in Scorpio,
don't you see that happening?
So, but what we've got to then do is kind of move everything back round, which then puts that Mercury-Mars conjunction in his 9th house. So you've got a double layer of things. You've got 2 things going on. You've got his, with his own ascendant, it's 12th house. And then with his progressed ascendant, it shifts it back into the 9th house, overseas affairs, overseas business, things to do with, other countries. And his progressed moon in Scorpio. And Scorpio ascendant and moon, Scorpios, anyone who's watching who's Scorpio, I mean this in the best possible way, but you can be devious.
Oh, trigger warning. You just don't open up anything with attachments for the next half hour.
Because Scorpios are very, very private, but they're actually very smart. They are clever. And they will dig right down and they will get their hands dirty in the bottom of that muddy pond because they want to find the gold bar.
And I'm going to expand on that too. And I'm going to give a little bit of my own interpretation in there too. With that Scorpio ascending, having it be conjunct to the moon here means that you're going to, and being in the 3rd house, that kind of does everything for me here, because that means that he's going to be like, hey, I am going to secretly like he knows the truth. He's going to misdirect people and use emotion on it. This is the reason why he's like, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. And then you're like, but there's no evidence of that. And then he's like, yeah, well, I know the truth. And you're like, okay, well, what is the truth? And they're eating the cats. And they're like, again, scoreboard. Show us something that is of substance. He is by astrological standards, he is an angry, hurt child that will misdirect anything from his own healing. It is a constant theme with him.
Yeah. Which makes him dangerous. And yes, Janet Moody, there are 3 levels of a Scorpio. And Cosmic BL, you're a Scorpio ascendant, I see. And, you know, it's a wonderful sign. It's absolutely, it's rich if it's handled in the right way.
Oh,
You
sure.
could say that about all the signs, like I'm saying with a Leo energy. You know, as long as you're aware that you might say anything just to get attention, then hopefully what comes out of your mouth is something that is worthy of attention.
Yeah.
And
See,
I've just seen,
did you see me here?
yes, I'm just reading that. I have a good
Yeah.
feeling Trump's cognitive health will be exposed very, very soon. I think
Look at
that
the
is a
six.
very interesting
Yeah.
observation. Yes, I think it's an
Let's go to the sixth house, and you know, in this regression, it's void, but you know, in there he's got his fortune, and we're looking at Ceres here. What,
yeah,
you know, I actually look at the opposite side of a
yes,
chart when I see a void.
yeah,
Don't you?
yes, 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 yes,
So, you know, you've got Pluto over there.
yeah,
You've got you know, everything about his health will be very public.
yeah.
And everything about this will also be, you know, Saturn sitting in
Mm,
Leo in opposition to that sixth house, that cognitive
yes.
value to it is
He's
really kind of
slowing him down because Saturn slows things down.
you better have your act together going into this. And I think
Mm,
what you're seeing is a constant testing, not a cognitive testing, not a stress test, whatever, but you're seeing Donald Trump be tested in a way that he can't fulfill it. You know,
yeah,
he's kind of like the bad guy that's being chased, and he might be outnumbered and he's being chased. But what he does is he throws the vase on the floor. He turns over the table. You know, he throws obstructions in between you and him. And then he's able to get away just a little bit further. It's not sustainable, mind you. It's
mm,
not something that's like, oh, you finally found a solution. He's never cared about a solution. He's only cared about accountability and not being held accountable. So there's that.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So, you know, it is interesting when we look at secondary progressions, and that's why I brought this in, because I thought for people to know that when they have a session, we will look at progressions, because it is so super helpful if you've got to make a big decision about something, about a move or a
Right.
relationship, career change. Looking at the progressions, suddenly you think, oh, right, okay, now I see what's happening.
Yeah, and I think the other value of even looking at charts like this for yourself is to give yourself a raw, honest opinion. Like if we're, you know, I set this up to be like, okay, Donald, this is what we're looking at. You know, if I was strategizing, if I was sitting down with Donald Trump right now, and again, you're trying to rationalize that the irrational is its own difficulty, but the first thing I would say to him is why are you hurt? Have you ever gotten there? And I
Mm,
don't mean to be his therapist. I'm long since, you know, I'm not even remotely qualified. And your qualifications into this is, you know, would you even take somebody like Trump as a client? You know, to
Probably not at this point, because
yeah,
I don't know whether he is willing or able to process the trauma or the deep wounds that he carries. And they
yeah.
have to go back to childhood, clearly. You know, this is a damaged little boy. And we're still dealing with that damaged little boy. That's the problem. And he kind of thinks he's king of the world, which
And
is not good.
and I'll speak on behalf of a lot of the people that I know that tune into this and see it. What you're witnessing and what you're feeling, I'm going to help you reconcile it. There is a deep, profound loss
Yes.
when you see somebody's tragedy like this. Like
Yes.
astrologically, Donald J. Trump is an absolute walking dichotomy disaster. Now, had he made different decisions, it's
Yeah.
tough to play what if. But had he made different decisions, you'd be like, well, this challenge is going to come up again. How are you going to handle it? But he didn't handle it the other 78 times it happened in his life, you know,
Mm,
during his other regressions and solar returns and, you know, his squares, his trines, and all that other stuff.
mhm.
Instead, what he did is he said, I don't see a problem with any of this. I don't, whatever, which is why people that are conscious go through a very radical self understanding of who they are and self love
Mm,
and recognize that like they might be mistake ridden, but it's not going to define them.
yeah.
Instead, he says, well, if I don't acknowledge it, it doesn't define me either. But by saying, I'm not going to let this, conquer me, any one particular thing, you have done soul growth in that moment to say, like, okay, it's part of my story, but it's not defining me.
Yeah.
He's letting his avoidances and his grift and his behaviors define him. And that's the tragedy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I
Have you
don't know.
got his solar return chart there that I sent you?
Yeah, give me a
Because
second.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that's
give me.
quite interesting, because I wouldn't particularly want to have this as my solar return. It's quite challenging for him, I think.
Well,
On
when you talk about returns, and actually maybe for just a brief second here, you could maybe um oh my gosh, is his solar return on the Jupiter square Neptune?
yeah,
Okay,
and
so that's his actual solar return. That's why I
his
actually
solar
grabbed that
return,
chart. I thought I
well,
was
it
grabbing that
actually
one.
is on. He gets his solar return today. Okay, so the sun has actually returned to the exact position of when he was born today.
Doesn't that make him such a son of a gun?
I mean, it's a difficult solar return. He's because he's got mutability on the four quadrants. He's going to be a little bit all over the place, and with that Virgo ascendant, he's
No.
suffering from anxiety and worry and stress. And look at the nodes. He's got the
Oh,
South Node hiding in that 12th house on his ascendant, and the North Node in his 6th house. It's a little bit like the chickens coming home to roost, isn't it? It's something. There's something coming back. Maybe it's a karmic debt is due to be looked at.
well,
And
when
yeah,
we talk about karma, though,
mm,
understand karma. Karma is not a scorecard. Karma is something that when it's used correctly, you understand your purpose, your ties, that sort of thing. If you don't recognize that, if you don't see it through and through, it's going to keep coming up. So what you're talking about right here, right now, is the idea that he is without a doubt in the middle of his, like, it's coming up again, Donald. Just like I said just a few minutes ago, like, hey, this is happening again. How are you handling this? You're calling it a karmic return. Here we are, right?
mm,
Here
mm,
is exactly what you're talking about in
mm,
conjunction to that. Um, yeah, and it does truly happen today, right?
mm. Yes, though his solar return is actually today, the 13th. But this wheel that we're looking at is his natal chart with the Jupiter
Yeah.
square Saturn Neptune.
Listen,
So, but isn't it interesting that he's got the same aspects that Iran had, or no, that Israel had in its chart with the Mars conjunct Mars?
oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
It's
As the
fascinating.
kids say, shit just got real.
It's just so fascinating that this stuff happens like this. And I mean, if we look at what's around for him tomorrow, with his birthday and the parade and all of that, I wonder who will rain on his parade, because
Oh, it's supposed to be torrential downpours.
oh no, you are kidding me.
Well, he
Oh
pissed God off,
God.
so there's that.
Oh,
Even
but
the evangelicals say you didn't pay us enough.
yeah,
Um,
I still come back to what I was saying 2 years ago about Pluto, transiting Pluto in his 6th house, that he's coming up to his Pluto opposition.
yeah,
And
and that's
well,
that. Listen,
um,
this is us not being
an
wishful
exit
thinking.
moment. This could be an exit
This
time.
is not, and again, I'm going to keep him in fight or flight mode. But
Yeah,
Penny has got the thing that I'm excited about with this is all the stuff you and I have been talking about for 4 years. Our relationship has been based on conflict resolution in the stars and giving comfort to people to help understand it.
yeah,
Like, that is our karmic relationship. That is what you and I bring to the world, right? I mean,
yeah.
would you agree?
I agree. I
When
agree.
when
Yeah.
you see Pluto enter a 6th house the way it does for Donald Trump,
Mm,
and then you see things like a Mars return on its ascendant when you're like, hey, check me out, I'm important. That is just bad news after bad news of somebody going, I didn't pay attention, or I have a real opportunity of doubling down. He could have had he made different choices along in his astrological chart, he could have been sitting under a lotus tree in full guru mode. He had that potential. Instead, he chose to not apply any of the lessons. In this moment, the thing that is coming to roost is that his choices on being angry and deflection, in not paying attention to the things that are happening. Having Pluto sit here in Aquarius does say something to the idea that the greater group of the world, the humanity at large, will actually be the thing that does him in.
Yeah. I would, if this was my chart, I would be keeping a low profile this weekend because of that Uranus square Mars, because I'd be worried that, I'm going to trip and break my leg, or something's going to happen to me. I would be very concerned about my health personally.
Yeah. And listen, I also think that there's something to be said with the Mercury. He just had his Mercury return like 5 days ago, I think.
Oh, yes. Gotcha.
Which is in the 11th house, which is him just, and again, he's got the pulpit, the chairman calls on you, Mr. Trump. How he's using it is so divisive because he's trying to cover up all the other aspects in his chart, all the other mistakes in his past. And they are really kind of coming together. I still, of everything powerful in Trump's chart that we've talked about over the years, yes, the Pluto transit. Yes. I mean, when you think about it, when Pluto was transiting through his 5th house, that gave him creative power in a weird sort of way, right? Uranus is fully into his 10th house now. He is headed towards his Uranus return, which will happen in another, I think it's 4.5 years. Which,
if he's still around,
get your money ready, Vegas. But just the fact that it's activated in the 10th house, do you want to talk about Uranus's impact on that? What's the go big or go home part?
Because I've obviously been going through Uranus in the 10th myself, and Uranus conjunct my son. Whether he actually is around to receive Uranus conjunct his sun, I don't know, because of his age and of it's not going to be for about another 5-6 years, 7 years.
It's just under 5 years. I pulled the calculation a while ago. It's just under 5 years.
Okay. But Uranus in the 10th is a great position. It really puts him out there on the public stage, and he has a fabulous opportunity with Uranus going into Gemini to really communicate in a very positive and astounding way. If he uses it positively, he could really make himself heard as somebody. It's about loving peace and not hating war. Because if we're spending all our energy on hating war, we're hating war. We're not giving enough energy to, I love peace. Let's have peace. I love people alive. I love people well and healthy. I love people happy. He could do that. He's in a position where people would listen to him if he said, I mean, he does say it, but he's still allowing the energies to drag it into, I hate war, I hate killing, I hate children dying. Or we just get more of that, because you have to stay with, I love peace. I love children living and having happy lives. Does that make sense?
Not only does that make sense, it also encapsulates everything that we've talked about in this man over the past 5 years, that he does not sit on the right side of this for whatever reason. We can't be a psychologist now, but understanding that part of the reason why he's so influential is because his chart is such banger awesome. Like he is just like, he could make an impact, and this is what he's choosing to make his impact in, because his value system is sideways, which is why he's attacking our value systems, which is why, to your point, to say, hey, Are you with us to love one another, or are you with us to divide us? And
Yeah.
that is what Uranus represents for the greater good. Uranus is the strategic partner in systematic changes. Notice
Mm.
how I didn't say good or bad.
No, exactly. That's the whole point. It's not about making it either or. It's about saying, I love peace. I love love. I'm not going. I'm not talking about woo woo, floaty, floaty, airy fairy. I'm talking about saying I love peace. I love harmony. I love people being happy. I love kids being happy. I love
Yeah.
people having opportunities to learn, etc., etc. But if we're focusing all the time on the negative, I mean, the thing is, we are human, and this is the problem. We have this dark side, we have this shadow side. And until we can fully understand and work with our shadow side and integrate it, we're always going to be tripped up by it. So that
Mm,
human consciousness doesn't get this opportunity to evolve to a higher level of consciousness so that we can eradicate
yeah.
war and all this destruction. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And we just, I have a conscious becoming class that's been, very much in the pursuit of understanding how consciousness works. And astrology is a piece of the consciousness, right? Like you have to accept all of the pieces and the tools. And we had a great guest speaker. His name is, Dr. William Relier. He has just become a doctorate. His paper was on understanding the elements of consciousness and what goes into it. And one of the defining features that he kept kind of coming back to was understanding the duality of the moment. And the duality of the moment is, based in a simple question. That simple question is, what is the number one quality that you want in the person that's closest to you, your right hand person, your advisory board, whatever? Do you want integrity, or do you want honesty? And he presented it in a way where it was polar. First of all, just the question itself is a born fallacy, because the argument is that both can exist because they
Yeah,
actually work on a different plane.
yeah.
But when you look at Uranus's effect into Donald Trump's existence,
Mm,
you are getting neither
mm,
integrity or honesty in terms of what we would consider integrated honesty. We're
mm,
getting honest as in, like, people are going to look at him and be like, he's super honest. At least he's honest, saying, well, I don't like Nancy Pelosi, or I don't like this person, or whatever. Well, he's honest. No,
mm,
he's not. He's unfiltered and unhinged. There's a
mm,
difference. People think that honesty needs to have brutal in front of it.
mm,
That is the difference, where people are like, honest, I'm not interested in hurting you, but I want honesty here,
mm,
is one level that comes out of Uranus. The
mm,
part that he is embracing is the brutal part of it. And
mm.
there's no other way to explain it. And I hope the solace that we bring into this is to explain, you can't put your energy into his choices. You can't put his energy into it. We have to have faith that we're going to get there. We have to have faith that this is all kind of somehow important, right?
Because I think, he's actually part of a very important progression for the human race, because in many ways, because of the way he is waking us all up, and we're going, wow, hang on a minute. This is
Yeah.
not the way we want to do things or the way we want to think. And
Yeah.
so he's actually making everybody question everything, and which is good. So there is a benefit
Right.
to what he's doing, and I
And
think we have to recognize that.
yeah, the cringeworthy part of that is that you admit that he's doing anything positive, because it's so
But
difficult because he's so egregious, right?
however, Brandon, if we want human consciousness to evolve, we have to look for the light within him. We
Hmm.
have to acknowledge that there is a spark of the divine in every single person. Even the most evil despot, there is a spark of the divine. If we can't see
Hmm.
that, then human consciousness will never evolve, is my feeling.
And listen, that has been I think you and I have been very consistent in being able to lay it out there, to be like, if this guy just made different choices, if this guy just didn't have the sphere of influence that he has, And by the way, notice how I haven't villainized him by saying, I want your flight logs to Epstein Island. Notice how I'm not villainizing him by saying your Bitcoin effort is a full-on grift. I mean, he has a saddle car of money that's coming in. So when you're talking about the second house being activated, Penny, this guy, he can't get enough. If we just had, if most people had just, 6 of the digits in his account, plenty of people would be paid off with 6 of his digits, because in his brain, he's like, I can't get enough. And everybody around him has that same value system, which is what we're railing against, right?
And I
Wow.
think that there's just a couple of things I want to say in reply to some of the chat, which is Lexi asked about Putin, but I think we're going to have to deal with that in another show, because there's not going to be time to even begin to because that's not center stage at the moment. It may become center stage over the weekend. Who knows? But we're not prepared enough to look at that today. And secondly, I'm being asked here about the G7 and doing a chart for the G7. Well, again, we haven't got time to look at it as a specific entity today.
Right.
I can certainly have a look at it for my live on Sunday, but I think also it just comes back to the fact that Nassimi is also saying that she has a horrible feeling that something terrible is going to happen at the G7.
Exactly.
Something terrible happens everywhere all the time. And I think sometimes we have to be careful that we don't get caught in the sort of the fear element, or the sort of the drama of, oh, something terrible is going to happen, because actually something terrible did happen yesterday, and something terrible is happening at the moment between Israel and Iran. And whether lots of terrible things are going to continue to happen, whether it happens on the 15th, 16th, or 17th is pointless, because we know that security is going to be second to none because of all the important people that are going to be there. So that there's no way that they can't have really good security. If something happens, it happens. We can only really use astrology in hindsight then. Wouldn't you agree, Brandon?
Well, yeah, and it's security second to none, like a Trump rally in Pennsylvania. But it's also, I'm sorry, was I political there? I just kind of like stuck that in. No, but there's a value system here that we have to kind of understand. It's like, and it's not to say that you can't do the work on the G7, because I think that would have its interest. But one of the challenges with the G7 is kind of like when we take the United States as a whole, we have to respect all the pieces and the components to it. And even though you can talk about timing and you can talk about a meeting, I mean, you're really just doing, creation charts versus transit charts. What's going on today?
Yeah.
The part of it for me, when it really gets down to like personal astrology, like when we pull stuff out of Donald Trump or whoever, the dialogue then becomes like, you actually have control over that. You actually have that. The hindsight of what the United States is going through in its returns, what G7 is going through, what countries are going through, that kind of like horrific balance that we tend to kind of find in, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them all, and there you have astrology. People in India right now are suffering because of that. And by the way, this wasn't a terrorist attack. There is already clear evidence that this was a system functional error based on the pilot and how he called Mayday. It's horrific, guys. It's fucking horrific. And there is nothing you can pull.
Are you saying that what they're suggesting is it's human error?
No, I think it was mechanical failure, because he was basically saying,
and the undercarriage was still down.
I don't know his language, so I don't want to speculate.
But what about the last guy in the world, the guy that survived in seat 11A?
There was one survivor. Wow, I did not know that. Do his fucking astrology. Excuse my French.
He walked out of it, and he says, I don't know how I'm alive. But he was in seat 11A, and you
11,
watched number 11. Yeah.
11, huh?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's I did not know that. That's
And yes, Janice, I agree with your comment.
Exactly. Point of no return. I also think, we start to kind of deliver. I think we both did this. Like when we went through, when you and I went through our transition of like, okay, what's this going to look like? We only got so far. I find a lot of solace when we connect in this because I know my tone and tempo. There's a lot of fire and brimstone out there, and I really appreciate that you take it for the real. And I've tried to do the same, and I think that's what's going to win out here. And I've talked about the new podcast that's coming up. I had to kind of take a sidestep with it with some stuff going on. Got to take care of mom.
I know.
And it's the extra optimistic. I'm charting it. I'm looking at I'm like, when's a good time to launch this? When am I gonna sassafras my knowledge? And the the delays that I kind of had to go through personally are all also in a chart where it was like, oh, well, if you handled it differently or you did whatever. I mean, there's some things that are just inevitable. They are just like, okay, here you go. When you take care of a couple of elderly parents, a couple of them, it is a non-starter for me that every once in a while, one of them is going to blow out a tire. One of them is going to have a thing.
Yeah.
And, that's the unpredictability to it, but it's still in a chart.
Yeah.
It still presents itself, and being able to kind of like hug it and embrace it, I think is the thing that we're telling all of you to do. If you feel like you need to stand up and argue for marginalized people, do it. If you feel like you have to take a rest and shut off the news and say, call me when you guys do another show, okay. Like both are okay. Both can be true. Both can still be part of the same movement of making sure we get there, but we don't want to get into a point where we haven't done anything and therefore we have no choice.
Can you remind us about the numerology of the number 11? Because there's a lot of going on.
Well,
Remind us about the numerology. And then I think because we've been going for 1:11, 1 hour, 11 minutes, we should think about winding things down.
Holy Toledo, look at us. We're so simpatico. Super brief. In the work with numerology, and the reason why you pay attention to numerology is because it creates and allows mile markers, whether you go through, the 1 through 9, and whether you do the elevation level where you stack it together when you talk about your, your life path, your birth numbers, all that other good stuff. Numerology can play a very important part of your awareness to it. When 11 comes out, and the reason why my face was what it was very clear to me, because that is a protected number. That is an angelic number. That is angels are around us.
And that's why 11:11 is always an important symbol to see.
Well, 11:11 complicates it in a really beautiful way, because
okay,
it takes on new meanings, because it's not only, my theory that I've talked about in some books is that it's the 4 levels of consciousness. You have the male and the female energy down here, and then you have the elevated sense of where spirit is, and then you have creator energy above that, which is the 4 levels, which is 11:11. It is also a DNA code. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm trying to teach a class in 10 seconds. But it's the 11 itself is kind of a signifier code of protection. It is also an angelic number. It is the 1 + 1 is 2, which is divine connection in that moment, but expressed in the what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine, and we're not on the same play. So 11 is a very common number, and seeing 11:11 can represent things after someone passes. It can also represent things for you as you progress and have growth points. So that's me trying to, that I literally just taught a class in 8 seconds.
Brilliant.
Was that all right?
Because I'm not an expert on numerology. It's not something I've ever studied. So,
well, and it's interesting too. That was one thing that I noticed about you. Can we just have Penny and Brandon time for 10 seconds? Well, I think it's interesting because one of the things that I've done a deeper dive in astrology for my own learning, because I'm like, I've got it, but I need more, is understanding how the decans work, and how, the low angles, the mid angles, the high angles tend to kind of roll. Because you and I are we're both Leo risings, but we also we approach it differently. Like you approach it from a much younger perspective. I approach it from like, we have to go wisdom, which is why you're kind of like, hey, I'm just going to be optimistic and running through the fields. And then I'm sitting here going, but history and knowledge, and we need to see it, and we're repeating ourselves and that sort of thing. So if you want the nutshell of the difference between a Leo rising at an early angle versus a later angle, there it is. Like, we both kind of embody that. So it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Penny, I love our time together.
I love our time together, always.
Yeah, it's always great.
We'll have to do this again fairly soon, and because there's so much going on at the moment. So
I think it's beautiful that we have been dancing around the 84 number, the Uranus return number, like all show. So listen, be sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you follow Penny. What time is your Sunday, Penny Live?
6 o'clock Central European Daylight Time. That's midday Eastern Time, and an hour less as you go west. It's about, I don't know, 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time.
Math. Yeah, just tell them math. And well, you know, Friday is Sunday is Father's Day. And
cool. Happy Father's Day.
Well, relax. I love that. Thank you, is what I meant to say. So the kids say to me, Dad, what do you want to do? Dad, we'll do anything you want, which is code for you want to play video games. Like, that's kind of. So I told them, and we're getting kind of the north end of some rain, but it should kind of clear out a little bit earlier. Most of it is centered around the mid-Atlantic states, aka Washington, D.C. So sorry, the bullet didn't go off. And so I have asked them to meet me in the yard to do a full day's worth of yard work. And they just looked at me. They're like, what? And then I said, yes. And then this is a rake. There are many like it, but this one is yours. And this is a bag. But we're going to do some cool stuff. You know what we're going to do too? I'm going to give them sharp objects. I'm going to give them hatchets, and I'm going to tell them all about George Washington, and we're going to chop down some not so cherry trees. They're mostly sycamore up here. So right. we're gonna chop those bad boys down. We'll probably throw a fire together. I'll keep you posted.
I like that comment Christine's just made. No one man in this world can project onto every person living the chaos of his mind without consequences. Love it.
Nice one. And Christine actually brings up the idea of the ego paradigm. How much is enough? How much is what we can influence other people? Like, if I open the door for you, my sphere of influences, you're going to look at that and say, should I open the door for other people? Or I'm going to say, thank you for that kindness. Yeah. But does that change the world? In a sense, yes. Do what you can when you can. And if you think you're doing too much, you probably are.
Yeah. And if you don't think you're doing enough, you're not.
Don't you love it? Yeah, Janet, I will fulfill my kids holding hatchets. That is going to be so much fun.
Can I send your mum love? Because I know she's been a bit poorly. So I just want to say, I really hope she gets better soon.
It's been a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Been a whirlwind. So, and of course, sometimes too much knowledge is rough. And having too much knowledge of, say, astrology is tough. We've got some returns and some conjuncts in her chart that are, we had to build a strategy around it. And the strategy is patience and deceleration and taking a step back and not saying, we're going to do this. We're going to fight this. We're going to, and trying to tell my Aries mother to take a chill pill has been my life.
No, she's got Saturn coming in the Aries. Oh gosh, and Neptune. Oh dear.
Listen, you just summarized my challenge. It's just so like, it's kind of like every game plan. Like when I work with somebody, whenever I work with somebody on a project or whatever, and we have this really cool person that's coming on with the More Than a Medium Media Network, who is actually exploring European UFO technology. The dude is just super smart. And, and I'm like, okay, let's kind of take a look at the chart. And I talked to him kind of about, birth times and whatever. And then he just laughed and he said, this is a guy that chases UFOs and interviews, abduction people. And he goes, you don't believe in that stuff, do you? And I nailed his sun moon rising in 2 seconds. Yeah. And he goes, well, I'll give you this much, your stuff. So here we are.
By the way, just before we go, tomorrow night, on my channel, Channeling and Stranger Things, Sarah and I are going live again at 6 o'clock Central European Daylight Time, and we are looking at signs, and we will give you signs should you so desire.
What kind of signs are you talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about the fact that we're always looking, universe, give me a sign. And often they're so obvious we miss them because we look too intently. And so at the same time, we're going to use the divining rods and the pendulum and answer questions.
Well, then let me give to you
Mm-hmm.
one of the poems out of my new latest book then.
Ooh, okay.
What a great way to wrap up.
Fantastic.
This is called, and it is exactly what you're talking about. It's called The Heavy Feather. I lift, I float against all things unseen. The pull, the drag, still afloat in between. My desires unmet to float far away. The weight of each burden that hold back this way. I am strong, I am soft, and I carry on wisp. Oh, dear sweet memory, my job is to lift. I'll only get so far in the breeze who I am, no matter how high I go or wherever I land. And I float and I fly away, and I've been let go from a bird of prey. Sent a sign from high above, let you know that I'm bringing love. We're in the end here. I'm so many things and carry so much weight. I land where I'm noticed for your love who was late. Pick me up when you see me. I don't weigh but a thing, and hold me in memory, the heaviest of things.
That's lovely, Brandon.
Available on Amazon. Just type me in, you'll find it.
Beautiful.
Thank you guys so much for being part of my journey. Thank you, Penny, for being part of my journey.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Brandon, as usual.
We're getting pretty good at this, kid.
Not bad. We might actually get it right one day, but
I think this is the most right we've been. All right.
We say that every time.
We are just a beautiful, imperfect perfection every single time. I love it.
Something like that. Listen, I love all you guys. You're awesome. Join me tomorrow, 6 o'clock European time, for me with channeling and Stranger Things. And then on Sunday for my weekly live forecast for the week ahead.
More Than a Media Network is going to flood the zone. So we'll see you soon.
Love it.
Thank you, guys. Take care. Love.